Hello, you wonderful people. So for today's video, I want to talk about the fact is I've done it again. I am currently in the middle of my fifth playthrough of Trails of Cold Steel. It's kind of a sickness. I can't help myself but play these games over and over and over again. And you might be asking yourself like, oh, you must be playing it over and over again because you need to, you're going after the trophies. It's like, no, I got all the trophies my third playthrough. And it's like, oh yeah, it's like, I love these games. I literally beat the fourth game for a second time last month, and I still get that itch from time to time because I'm obsessed with these games. I can't help myself. It's not even a situation of like, oh, it's because I missed out on something. It's like, no, I've recently, like, my previous playthroughs of these games have led me to do very extensive, like, everything with those games. Because, like, my second and third playthroughs, I already were doing stuff like talking to all the NPCs, trying to, like, understand and, like, do a lot of the world building that the Trails games do with a lot of its dialogue. Because if you don't know, like, a year ago, well, actually over a year ago, I started my new playthroughs of those games just for the sake of, because I wanted to do some discussion videos about them, kind of do, like, deep, massive dives on the Trails of Cold Steel games, because at the time the Cold Steel games were the only games I've ever played before. They're still currently the only ones I've ever played, but because at the time, like, I want to say Zero just came out on the PS4 here in the States. But prior to that, there was, like, PC ports and stuff like that for the Laburo games and the Crossbell games. That's a whole thing in itself. So I watched someone play the Laburo games. I watched someone play the Crossbell games just so I have better knowledge of understanding, because obviously a lot of that plays a massive role in the Cold Steel games in general, obviously because it all takes place in the same universe, but especially in 3 and 4. So there were some, like, big knowledge gaps I had because of that. So after, I was like, right, once I see all the Laburo games, once I see all the Crossbell games, then I'm gonna start my playthrough of the Cold Steel games over again, and it enhanced them, because I already loved the Cold Steel games so much, but that my enjoyment of them was enhanced even more because now I had the knowledge. So that's why my most recent playthroughs, which was my fourth playthrough of Cold Steel 1, 2, and 3, as well as my second playthrough of Cold Steel 4. The reason why it was my second playthrough, because I'd started a New Game Plus for Cold Steel 4, but I stopped myself because you're like, no, I want to get knowledge of the other games. And obviously, so it took me a while to kind of watch some walkthroughs and kind of deep dive in that. In the, like I said, Laburo games and the Crossbell games, but finally I ended up doing that, and that's when I, like, took my time. And like I said, they were slow playthroughs through Cold Steel 1, 2, and 3 again, just for the purposes of, like, I was taking very extensive notes. And then I eventually got to 4 again, which, obviously life got in the way too, so, like, I wasn't able to play them all the time, but I was squeezing in time here and there. I didn't even intentionally do this. I kind of beat Cold Steel 4 a second time almost 2 years after I beat it the first time, because I beat it like maybe November 17th, because it took me about 2 weeks or so after it came out to beat it. And I think my last playthrough of 4, which I finished last month, I think I finished it like November 14th, so I almost like 2 years to the day. Wasn't even doing that intentionally, it just ended up happening that way, funny enough. So I thought that was just kind of neat. But, like, yeah, like, I started my, like, extensive note-taking and playthroughs over a year ago. It was like September, because I've actually put up the prologue and the first chapter sometime last year, but it's just like I just haven't taken the time to, like, sit down and record it. I've recorded up to chapter 5 of the first game, but I just haven't sat down to edit those and upload those. But to put that in perspective, like, I want to say around the time I was doing at least maybe the first chapter or maybe the prologue, whichever, like, some of those recordings were done before Kuro no Kiseki, which is the most, well, not even the most recent, because the second one, these are the Calvert games. The first of the Calvert games was about to come out, or maybe had just came out when I started doing those. So, like, now the second one's like about to be rolled out and stuff like that. So they kind of put that time frame in perspective. But it's like, yeah, I think it's funny. I need to take time to kind of restart those up again, because now I've played through all 4 of the Cold Steel games, and like I said, I've taken massive, extensive notes. So like I said, I've also recorded. I still have my recordings for up to Chapter 5. I actually was in the middle of recording my discussion of Chapter 5, so I'm going to have to pick that up at some point in time to finish up, but I know where I left off notes-wise. But yeah, just to kind of put that in perspective for you, like, I'm just that obsessed with these video games. I'm like, well, you know, I mean, just have another trip through Cold Steel 1 because it still makes me feel nostalgic because especially because, like I said, I had just beaten 4 for a second time like last month, and now to be back in 1, it's like, oh, look at you, you little fledglings, oh, you're so young and innocent, and all these issues amongst class 7. It's like it's so interesting going from 1 to 4, 1, 2, 3 to 4, and then now going from 4 to 1 again. It's just like, it just gives me nostalgia. To put it in perspective for you, like I've played these games like 1, 2, and 3 over the course 4 times each now, over the course of a period of 2 years, because I didn't start playing the Cold Steel games until 2020, because that's when I got like 1, 2, and 3 pretty close to each other. Like I ended up, before I beat 1, I ended up getting 2. Before I ended up beating 2, I ended up getting 3, and that was in 2020. And by the time I got those, what, maybe winter to springish, and obviously Cold Steel 4 here in the US didn't come out till like October 26th of 2020. So there was a couple months in between 3 and 4. My playthrough of 3 and 4. That's why like I went back and played through 1, 2, and 3 again in preparation for 4 at that time. So yeah, I actually think I played through them once, like, you know, after I beaten 3, and then I played through them all again in preparation for 4, I believe. Once again, I'm just obsessed with these games. And I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, if you've never played the Cold Steel games, they're the best video games ever. It's like, no, I know those games are not for everyone. I know there's like someone on YouTube who has it. I know some people who had issues with just the structure of those games, the structure of their story and stuff like that. I know people have their issues with those games in particular, but I love and adore them so much. They are my favorite video games right now. I'm completely obsessed with that world. I would not consider myself like a Kiseki like nerd. I know everything, but I feel like I'm decently knowledgeable. Where I'd compare my like Kiseki knowledge to my Kingdom Hearts knowledge, which I think that's kind of an interesting video in its own right. Just kind of just talking about like the things like the worlds of nerddom that you're really, really deep into. But nevertheless, that's just what this whole video is just about. Once again, I've made tons and tons of videos just gushing about the Cold Steel games, but it's just like I just thought it was kind of a funny conversation to have yet again to let you know that yeah, I'm super in there when it comes to these games. I've never I'd probably say like the Kingdom Hearts games are the next games to this that I've ever like. Prior to this, the Kingdom Hearts games were the ones I was the most obsessed with. I probably put like Final Fantasy in that same category as well. But I've never been this obsessed to play a game through this many times in such a short span. Yes, it's 2 years, but still, like every so often, I'm starting a new playthrough. It's just crazy in my opinion, you know. But obviously, this is just me. I'd love to get to know your thoughts. It doesn't even have to necessarily even be about the Cold Steel games. I'd love to know what video games are you that obsessed with that you constantly find yourself playing over and over and over and over again, you know. So I mean, I talked about it before. Like there's certain games I love and I'm obsessed with that I'm always interested to watch someone's playthrough. I've watched a few people's like playthroughs through the Cold Steel games to hear their thoughts about certain things and their reactions to certain developments in the stories, especially people who are, you know, maybe have only played the Cold Steel games, but also people who are knowledgeable about the Kiseki universe as a whole, you know, and then they play the Cold Steel games and some of those reveals and what some of those elements mean to certain people with Kiseki knowledge. Like I said, like going through the games again for me, I'm like, oh my god, some of this hits even harder now because I have the context of the previous 5 games, you know. So it's that whole conversation. But like I said, it doesn't have to necessarily be about the Kiseki/Trail games. It could just be any game in general. Just let me know. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.